And welcome to Bleav in Chargers, the tasty licks provided by Preston Smith. You can follow her on TikTok, just Just Preston with a Y, Prestyn, or on Instagram, Preston Smith Music, or right here. If you're watching this on YouTube, she's got a YouTube channel that's growing quite a bit, so feel free to check that out if you dig the guitar and the rock and roll, as the kids don't like to call it. With the great Lorenzo Neal, someone we've been having extensive conversations about because one of his former teammates and one of the all-time greats, Antonio Gates, going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Chargers going to play Hall of Fame weekend in Canton. And by weekend, they play Thursday. And the induction ceremony, of course, will be the weekend. So, though, you're going to be staying out there in Canton for Gatesy to get his much-deserved induction into the NFL Hall of Fame, something that should be fitting for an individual like you, the most dominant fullback of his era. Always loved breaking it down. Got a chance to see the new fullback out there yesterday. The OTAs were open to the public, and our man Steve-O Klotz continues to make a mark. Ended up, I think he caught, I wrote it down, 4 balls. Caught 4 passes yesterday, and, once the pads come on, that's when we're really going to see him shine. But you do get the sense that the staff is excited about that young man, an undrafted free agent fullback out of Iowa State. One of the captains of their team had a chance to catch up with special teams coordinator Ryan Ficken last week, and he effusive with praise on him. So I know that was a bit of a long intro with you sitting there staring at me low, but hey, you're a fullback. You are one of the great fullbacks in the history of the league, and the Chargers not only have one in Scott Matlock, but 2 with Klotz now potentially making this team or being on the practice squad at least.
Yeah, and you got to look at, Matlock, big guy, and he did very well for 300-some pounder in the backfield, did some nice things, blocking, making some holes and playing great on the defensive line. But Klotz just kind of that more true fullback. I know I did a deal with, the coach with when you're talking about John Gruden. Here's the deal: they had an award called the Low Man Award. I don't know if you've seen that, Money, but it's the Low Man Award, and it's brought to you by when you watch what's the name, Barstool Sports. So the guys on there, he got a Low Man Award. You can look it up. And so me and Coach, we picked like a fullback every year. Nice. And you go through that, so it's pretty cool to have an award kind of after you, the Low Man Award for fullback. So that's good that the Chargers are going in that direction. Awesome. Yeah, so going in that direction of getting that true fullback. But it's just, I know you're there at OTAs. Can't wait to really get in and tell them what your eyes is seeing out there and talking about just not the fullback, but everybody out there.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun yesterday because as I remind the people about our friends at BetOnline, I want you to move to your right a little bit, Lo, so I can see that beautiful broad-shouldered body of yours as I'm just so skinny and narrow, Robert Griffin III style with my narrow shoulders going to get blown up when I try to hit that corner and take a turn. BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season in full swing. We obviously have the NBA Finals. We got the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. BetOnline has got so many ways to stay in on the action, the latest odds, news, scores, live in-game betting. So you see something that's jumping out at you, get in there, even though the game has already started and the dog days of summer rolling. That means you still got a ton of odds on everything. Obviously, baseball, UFC, boxing. Don't forget about tennis. All that stuff, NFL futures, even if you want to dig into some of those before they change, because people are getting excited about certain teams, and maybe you got a little bit more information than you think the others do to take advantage of those odds. BetOnline is the best online resource for all your sports wagering info, and remember to hit up that casino as well with all the Vegas-style games. BetOnline, the game starts now. Yeah, so yesterday, OTAs. No doubt, Lo, my biggest takeaway from watching the guys on the field at OTAs was yesterday, unlike last week when we had the media viewing portion of OTAs, there was no Zion Johnson at center. Zion was out there at center. He was the first team center. Bradley Bozeman was playing left guard. Still no Rashawn Slater, so he was not there last week. He's not there this week. I do think there's some hope and maybe some feeling that he'll be there next week for mandatory minicamp as he continues to work through this contract negotiation and what's likely to be a very big money extension. But he was really the only notable that was missing. Keandre Lambert-Smith was not out there, the 5th round receiver out of Auburn that they drafted in. There was another corner rookie undrafted corner that was not out there. Otherwise, 100% participation. But watching Zion take snaps, work, where he was working off to the side last week, yesterday he was with that 5. So Joe Alt right tackle, Mekhi Becton right guard. It was Zion at center, and then Bradley Bozeman was playing left guard. Trey was playing left tackle, and Jamari Sawyer was rotating in there as well at left tackle. So, the takeaway is, while last week you're like, maybe they're not really that serious about this Zion thing. This week you're walking away saying, yeah, it seems like they're pretty serious about this Zion at center thing, or at least giving him an opportunity. And I was talking to one of the coaches, and he said, he is built like the prototypical center. He has the brain of a prototypical center. Like, everything is there if we can get this right.
Do they just think that center would slow him down some? Because center, you got to make the calls. You're snapping the ball. You're looking, making the calls. 55 is a mic. Here's a mic. Hole, Lenny, Rip, all those different calls. They think that's going to make him be in tune to the game. It's a guard. Do they feel that he's just trying to come off too hard? Think the center position at times you don't have a guy on him. You get a little bit more help from the guards at times. What is kind of, because, and we know Zion's athletic. We know he's tough. He's strong. He's physical. He's a mauler. But center, I know he's athletic enough to play center. But what is kind of, you kind of getting the details and getting the weeds? What's kind of you're hearing? Just what's the sense of why? The why?
To me, it's with every position on the team, right? That is kind of just the identity of this staff and this front office. When you think about Elijah Molden, drafted as a corner, they trade for him, and Chris O'Leary, and he bust their tails in the offseason before the season starts to get him to understand playing safety. And that's what they say, right? They're like, we don't care. You've heard Coach Clinkscale say it. He's like, I don't care if you're a corner, if you're a safety. I just want my best 5 guys out there. So maybe I'm going to have 4 safeties in 1 corner. Maybe I'm going to have 5 corners. But our guys need to be able to play everywhere. So if someone goes down, which unfortunately tends to happen, I don't need to say, well, I'm going to put this corner who's here on this depth chart out there, when instead I can say, well, yeah, but this safety that's on the bench is better than this corner, so I want him out there. And those guys need to be able to cross positions. And I think it's the same on the O-line, right? Look at Trey Pipkins, right? He was their right tackle, and they made him a starting guard, and now he can play guard or tackle. Jamari Sawyer, he was a tackle at Georgia. They make him a guard. He can kick out to play tackle when Rashawn Slater goes down. Same thing with Bradley Bozeman. They signed him, and when they signed him last year, even, they said, yeah, we love his positional flexibility. And I think that's what they're trying to do is, Andre James was a guard in college, and he was a center for the Raiders. He's a guard at UCLA. He was a center for the Raiders. So I just feel like that's sort of the identity of this team. Like, yesterday when Sanjay was talking, someone asked him a question about Ladd in the slot, and he's like, don't ever call Ladd a slot receiver. He's not a slot receiver. He plays on the outside enough. I will move him all over the field because that's how good he is. That's the versatility he has. And so you can just see it, right, from every position, right, that's what they want. And I think they're just curious as to figure, okay, has he been an elite guard? No. Has he been serviceable? Sure. But maybe we've got a good guard that we can, that we didn't know was an exceptional center. And maybe that's what they're chasing.
And when you say that, Money, you talk about, hey, maybe we got a good guard that can be an exceptional center. And you're saying, okay, if that happens, does that make this offensive line better? So was the center, when you look at the center last year and center compared to now, if Zion can get it down, how much more athletic would that position be? Then you just kick out the guard and say, okay, if we get a guard now do you think the guards have potential to be more consistent than what he's been and what Zion's been? And if that's the case, and you say, okay, this offensive line can be a more complete offensive line.
So I was talking when I was talking to someone yesterday. It was funny, as I said, so just here's my main question: are they better?
Right.
And he said without question. He said the O-line without question is better. He said Mekhi Becton is a freaking stud. Just a ridiculous addition to this team and what he's going to bring at that right guard position. And that was the second thing he said. The first thing he said was Joe Alt is going to wreck this league. He is going to
Wow.
wreck this league.
Really?
And just apparently, this is a dude that got out of that Houston game, and it was probably the roughest game of the season for the O-line as a whole, right? And just even the tackles who had been so exceptional all year long. Even Slater and Alt struggled a little bit against Houston. And he said he got out of that Houston game, and he basically said, I'm going to watch every single play from this past season and figure out on the reps that didn't go exactly how I wanted them to go, what went wrong? What can I do to get better? They said he added mustard. The way he described it was, he's like, you got to remember, man, Joe was 20 years old last year, 21 years old last year. You know, he had turned, I think he was 21. And they're like, he's now, even though it's a year, they're like, you're seeing kind of young man strength has now converted to man strength this year. And they're like, he's probably top, he's over 330. And they're like, this is a dude who came in and said, I'm going to wreck the run game.
Wow.
That seemed to be the one thing that he identified. And he was like, I'm ready to wreck people. And Joe,
God.
man, when you see him, it's just, I was talking to someone, to one of the reporters when we were watching, and I said, and jump in here anytime. I'm rambling.
No, please do.
And I said, isn't it hilarious to look back on it 12 months ago, how stupid the conversation was about who should have been the first tackle off the board? When some people were like, well, you know, I'm a little bit worried about guys, and I kind of like the way Latham played. Now, you know, Fuaga now, if you just want to run blind, now we look at it and it's like, this is the dumbest conversation. There's just too much time from when the draft starts to when the draft happens. And those are the things that come up that can get into teams' heads. And you might move off a guy like Joe Alt, who looks like a unit. He is a freaking unit when you're watching him out there low.
Right. And here's a guy that you're talking about, just 1 year maturity, coming a guy that was 21, now 22. When you think about a guy that you think that hopefully he can have a long career and won't have a shoulder injury, but you remember when you talk about a team that just came in the league, the Jacksonville Jaguars, when they had, you know, Burnell and his tackle, Tony Berselli, here, you know, 6'6", you know, run grader, could pass block, and one of the better tackles in 2 You just see kind of that in Alt, but you know, like a Willie Roaf, a guy athletic. Look at Alt. He's athletic. He grabby. He's tough. And now he's going. Once he matures into that body, like you said, hey, last year he's 6'6", 6'7", whatever, and then we're like, oh, he just. But you got to realize now 22, and wait till he turns 25. Get to the
right.
You're still growing. This guy, and when you hear a guy and a coach says he's going to wreck people, he's going to wreck shop. And this is a guy, attention to detail, that went back. That's why you're like, you're rambling. I was like, you're not, please. I'm just, when you're talking like that, you know what it does to me? It's just like, man, I wish I could go back in time and say, man, I want to get and work out with you. Right. I used to love working out with the linemen and pushing myself to see if I was just as strong, because when you have a guy like this, I'm going to watch every single play, good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm going to find out what I did wrong, and I'm going to correct these things. When you have a guy that way and that determined, has put on more muscle and attention to detail, and you already got an all pro tackle on the other side, right. Here's a guy that's chasing greatness. I'm telling you, Alt chasing.
And that's the benefit of having Rashawn Slater there, is you're talking about Alt following someone. And look, I know I remember what my response was to when he said this to me. He said, you know, Slater can front squat, and he gave me the number. And I remember saying, I don't think I could front squat 90 pounds, let alone. So what would be a big number? You're a muscled up dude. What would be a big number to front squat? Like, what? I don't want to sound stupid, but
no, like if you could front squat 450, 500, okay. 450, 500.
So he said this guy front squats 490 like it's nothing. Rashawn Slater. He's like, do you understand? This dude front squats 490 like it's nothing. And I was like, dude, I couldn't front squat 90. I'd be like, my back. You know, it wouldn't work for me. So they were like, he's like, do you understand how strong Slater is? Like, do you know what it did? And I was just like, yeah, I guess that sounds really strong.
No, 490. That's a nasty. You're front squatting 490 in the front. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see back squat. That's way harder front squat. He's a monster. He's a beast. They got 2 tackles, man. You talked about it, you know, last year before the draft. I was like, oh, should they make this? Should they get this tackle, or should they go receiver? And it's like, dude, You went and you built, and we talked about building in the trenches, and these Chargers in this organization, they build in the trenches, and that's what they continue to do.
Yeah, and then even, and look at all what do you want, right? You want this. You want everything to just fit complementary football. And when you do that, and just think about what the conversation would have been if you would have drafted Omarion Hampton in the first round 5 years ago. People would be like, I have a running back in the first round. What are you doing? And now it's just so funny how the pendulum swings, or it's a snake eating its tail. Time is a flat circle. All of those sayings apply, right? Like now, people came to realize, hey, enough of this stupid positional value, and I can just take good football players. Do not miss in the first round and take good football players. When you see Omarion Hampton, I know there's no contact and stuff, but man, you see that hole open, and all of a sudden, poof, he is just in it, man, and he is explode. You're going to see it, Low. You're going to Brazil, boltsinbrazil.com. Go with Low. Make that trip with Low. I feel like we're going to come out of that Chiefs game, and you're going to be like, oh, hey, now. Oh, here we go. Oh, hey, now. Look at, how about this guy? Like,
Oh, boy.
You know how it is when you see it in person and it just looks different? Like, that's when you see that back coming through, and maybe you can't see the number because of the way they do OTAs. It's like a line of players, so you can't really see through them based on where we're allowed to stand. So you're like, who is that? Is that Sanders? And then once he gets through, it's like, oh, that's Omarion. That's who that is.
That's what they were doing. That's what they used to do in Oakland. Remember when Amari, it's Amari. It's gonna be like it's Amari.
Amari, exactly right.
Exactly. It's gonna take off. We talked about it. I mean, I watched the highlights, and then we had a Charger legend who coached him, running back.
Natron.
Come on, Natron Means come on the show and say this guy's special. And I watched those tapes, you and I, and we're like, man, when he's even, he's leaving. His big runs, the guy's explosive. He's got that slow to the hole, and then he explodes through. You get this guy out in space. He is a football player that has football speed. He is going to be very, very electrifying at the running back position, especially with the kind of line that you have and those big road graders. And now you're talking about getting down in 3rd and 2. They're thinking, you go with nickel person, go 3 wides, 4 wides, and now you put just Amari back there, and you say, okay, we think it's 3rd and 2, we can pass our run, and you got to be nickel. Oh, guess what? Those cornerbacks have fun. The linebacker's not on the field. You got to put your head in there and try to tackle that big boy coming downhill. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem.
Think about what he could be running behind in Joe Alt and Mekhi Becton. Again, 6'7" and 6'8", and a combined 700 pounds is what he's going to be exploding through on that. And then you could end up having, what's outside of Joe. If you want to really have some fun, put Tucker Fisk out there, or put Scott Matlock in the backfield. And now you've got 4 guys that are 280 pounds or more moving people in front of Omarion Hampton. And it's, the one thing also that I feel like, and look, it could all be lip service. I'm willing to concede that this time of year, everybody's excited about everything, right? But just one theme that I've heard from every person I've talked to, from every positional, I don't want to talk about exactly who I'm talking to, but look, each of the positions, there's one common theme, and it's like, hey man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to make the 53. I mean, there is going to be serious competition for defensive backs, safeties, and corners. We went through it last week. Remember when we were talking about 7 corners? You're not going to carry 7 corners. Can you carry 5 safeties? Maybe, but that's a lot of safeties when you look at the way a standard NFL roster is constructed. You look at this running back room, and they said Kamani was absolutely committed in the offseason and came back at another level. Sanjay said that all of the receivers were given some offseason homework. Hey, if you're interested, here's what I'd like you to do. And he said every single one of them passed flying colors. He's like, he goes, I gave them route concepts that I wanted them to try to absorb so we can maybe get a jump on it here. So we're not trying to do too much install. And they are already, and he's like, are they perfect? No. He's like, but they're at a spot where we're ahead. And they recognize what this competition is going to be like to make this team in that room. And all of them, hey, what does coach say? Competitors welcome. They have all taken to that. And they recognize that you want to be on a 53, you're going to have to earn it. There are no places that are being handed out, regardless of draft status. Were you taken by this regime or the prior. Whatever it is, and that's how. I mean, think about it. Last year, right? Simi Fehoko made the team, and Brennan Rice was a 7th-round draft pick. He didn't make he did make the team initially, but who was it? It was Nico Harris, who did not, and he was a 7th-round pick. Like, none of that matters. It is an open competition, and that's definitely something that I felt from all of the positional coaches and how they feel about their room.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a trade before training camp or during camp. I know people were saying, "Hey, want to go?" They just rather cut them. I think that there's some teams out there. Take the Niners for instance. You look at Q. Q's a receiver that they had a lot of high pick. Here's a guy that haven't really reached his top level yet, but he's showing the progress. And the Chargers can be like, "Hey, should we go in a new direction?" Okay, because we look at guess Debo left. He's gone. He's in with the Commanders. You think about the other receiver who just paid all the money to with
Ayuk,
the Niners. Brandon Ayuk, injured, doesn't really not kind of unhappy. So now you think about, okay, is there a possible trade? Can you go and do that? I think get the Niners on the phone, and I think, hey, there can be before the season even starts, before training camp, because you don't want to cut these guys in there.
Right.
See if you can get some leverage and see if something can happen, because I think you got some receivers that have some value.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to make the team as a receiver. In terms of Q, he was at the lectern yesterday, so we got a chance to talk to him. And one thing that he said repeatedly was experience. In my 3rd year here with the experience, and we asked him, we're like, okay, so what does I asked him? I don't, I always like saying we, because we're all kind of feeding off each other and where the questions are going. It's not like you come up with on your own. If you're smart, you sit there and you listen and you're trying to pick up on what other people are asking and maybe where this person's taking it. And so I finally just said, hey man, you've said it multiple times. Like, what is it? Like, what is it about experience that is valuable? How is it valuable to you? What has that done for you? And it's what you would expect. It's the answer that I expected to hear from him. And it's like, just, you're more comfortable. You're more confident. You're not thinking. You're not second guessing. Before you don't know, and you're like, oh, is this right? Is this not right? Am I supposed to be here? Where am I supposed? What? And it just, and he's like, he goes, last year, I just felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing. He's like, and now this year, 2nd year in the offense, knowing what they asked of me, knowing the teaching points that Coach Lal gave me, it's like, yeah, you're confident. You go out there and you're like, oh yeah, I got this. So I think if you look at last year, right, 55 catches, it's like a little over 700 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's a pretty darn good season for a wide receiver 2. I mean, you tell me your wide receiver 2 is going to give you 55, 700 plus, and 8. That's when you got lads setting records with 1,200, 9, and nearly 100 catches. Like, hey man, that's not a bad number 2 receiver.
It's not.
Q.
And that's where that's where I think the value lies. Because just what you said, here's a guy in his 3rd year, a little slower catching on, but now you see Q start to figure it out. He talked about confidence, talked about what this does. And now you're looking at it, you're saying, okay, so this guy's going into his 4th year. Are we going to, after this 4th year, are we going to restructure? How are we going to look at it? And here's the deal. And this isn't because I think the guy's made leaps and bounds.
Yeah,
catching the ball
much
with his
better
hands
last
now.
year.
He's a true number 2. You saw what he's able to do. 8 tugs. He run after the catch. Q had huge improvement. So this is a guy right now. It's like, okay, look, get on the phone, because I don't think that this guy's going to have it after this year, because of the fact
this is 3rd year low, so he'll have one more year before you got to worry about that 5th-year option. So, and that's where there's more value.
That's what I meant to say. There's more value now. So
right.
I just think that I think you have to explore it, because you just talked about how tight it's going to be, what is going to be. So if I can get a draft pick, a 4th, or maybe a possible 3rd, and now I got rid of a player, now I'm saying, okay, and I don't necessarily get a player, it just makes a little bit more room, makes your decisions a little bit more easy. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just talking about it.
I think it was actually, to me, Lo, I think you hit on a good point there. I think it's the prior. It's not the latter of what you talked about. I think if there is, the one way I could see it lining up is if Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, if these guys are flashing, in training camp, and there's another position group where they're lacking, I would think it'd be more of a player for player. It's like, hey, you know what? We got a little surplus here. There's value here. We know how good he is, but we need this. you have a surplus of this. Because this is a team that thinks they can win the Super Bowl this year. So getting a third or a fourth in the 2026 draft, I just don't quite see that unless it's a player they know they're going to move on from and just release, which I don't get the slightest sense that's cute.
No,
like that, you know what I mean? So to me, it's more of okay, you've got a corner that you're not, you've got a heavy corner room, or you've got a guard, or you've got a center, or you know what I mean? It's one of those sort of things that maybe that's where that thing could line up. And that's it. I didn't even think about it till you said it. And it's like, oh yeah, that actually I could see is, let's say it's a defensive tackle. It's just kind of where, and that's where, but I think it would have to be an obvious
player for a player.
It would have to be an obvious starter because they have depth. That's the one thing that Joe Ortiz and his staff have done an exceptional job of, is building depth on this team where you feel good. Like, oh, okay, if fill in the blank goes down, let's just say it's defensive tackle, right? And think about if Tier Tart goes, and I hate doing that. I don't even want to put names on it. No, I know. Fill in the blank goes down. Knock on wood, they don't. Then, hey, here's Jones. Here's Hand. Here's Abonia. Like, they have that. But it's like, oh, this guy's an obvious starter. He's obviously out there with Khalil Mack and Thule. And like, that's where I could see that coming into play.
And when you say this team, they're thinking about winning a Super Bowl, besides the Raiders, do you see this team sweeping? Do you think it's more obvious that they sweep Kansas City or Denver? Because I'm looking at this Denver team, Money, and
they're good.
They're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, it's a tough division. It's a real tough division. I mean, look, they all three made the playoffs last year, right? All three of them had double-digit wins. All three of them made the postseason. And the Chiefs have absolutely dominated the AFC. Unlike any other team in the last, like any other, it is recent history for the most part, since the Patriots. It was just a handoff. It was the Patriots, and they handed it essentially to the Chiefs. So to suggest that the Chargers are going to overtake the Chiefs, I think is a little irresponsible based on just how dominant they've been. You'd have to see it first to feel like you could make that proclamation then next year. But I certainly think they have the team to do it. I think they have the coaching staff to do it. I think the team is deep enough to do it. The question will be, are these blue chip players? We know Ladd is sniffing blue chip, super elite wide receiver. Omarion Hampton looks the part as a rookie. We've seen rookie running backs completely dominate, the league in their first season. We know about the tackles. We know about Derwin James, Khalil Mack. Those are elite players. I think Deion Henley's an elite player. So, like, are there enough of those that can carry you? But I say it more from the position of they believe it. Like, it's clear that they believe this is and it's not just lip service. Well, you have to say you can win the Super Bowl every year, or else what the heck are we going out there and playing for? We're asking these guys to sacrifice their bodies for 17 games. You can't say, oh yeah, sacrifice it for a 9-8 season and a potential what? No, everybody wants to win the damn, Lombardi. So they're going to say it, but I do think they legitimately believe it. And I think some of the signings suggest as much. Getting Mekhi Becton in here, recognizing how important that position was, re-upping Taylor Heineke for, a pretty sizable chunk of cash for a backup quarterback, even though you have Justin Herbert, just to make sure you're covered there. That I think bringing back Mike Williams, despite the injury last year, but saying, you know what, let's give him the, whatever it was, $8 million, because if he's right, he's exactly what we need. And we're willing to roll those dice, So I think that's indicated that they're all in. And that just leads me to think it wouldn't necessarily be trading a player who's a starter, who's out there getting a lot of snaps for a future draft pick. I think it'd be more, can we leverage this? Yeah, can we leverage this into a situation where we have a need, they have a need, let's exchange, and it's a win-win for certain.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be interesting, when you get into training camp and kind of watch what they did and kind of watch how quick this team can gel. Because when you look at the cupboards are definitely full. So you're going to be able to make whatever you want. And it's going to start up front. We get that, especially on offense. It's going to start up front. But we talked about it earlier, just the inconsistency on offense, and especially in November and December when they wanted to be able to run the ball. And against the Steelers, you had no answer. It became, pin the donkey, pin your ears back and go after Justin Herbert, because you asked the line is going to have to block, and you said, okay, guys got to hold up. And you saw the line just kind of, just wasn't able to do it because you didn't have that running game. I think without a doubt, with the running back combination, with that room, I think the biggest part that you see, the biggest improvement, I think, on just the team, you said collectively, to me, is going to be on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I think offensively, that's where you're going to have the most growth. And that's why this team is going to be a power 10 or power 5 team in the AFC. You say, okay, got to look at Buffalo. You got to look at Buffalo. You got to say, of course, the Ravens. And then you say, hey, because Kansas City's been there. But after those 3 teams, you got to take the Chargers. I think with the way the offense is built, I think you got to say, okay, where's this Charger team before the season starts? They're gonna have to, shake some head and turn some heads to get there. But I'm just talking about the 3 favorite teams. It's going to be, Buffalo, Ravens, and Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then where's the Chargers fit in that group?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because it's obvious to me. It's obvious, right? And the defense was elite last year, so it's hard to envision them taking another step. But I think they can. And I'll start there. Tarheeb still is going to have a season, man. That you can just see it the way and there's no contact right now, so it's more just seeing how the player sees it. And man, that dude sees everything. That's the most important. Yes, every corner's athletic. I don't need to tell you don't need me to tell you, the people, especially you, but the people listening and watching right now, you don't need me to tell you that corners have to be athletic and they have to have premier athletic traits in order to function in the NFL. So they all do. But when you can see it and you can feel it, and when you're watching how he's mirroring routes and how you can just see him almost be a step ahead of the receiver. Like he knows. And there's just certain corners that you watch and you're like, oh yeah, dude, this guy knows. He can, and that's Tarheeb. I think Tarheeb's gonna have a big year. I think that on that side. 2, you just had, I don't know if you saw the clip of Dayon was on with Jim Rome, and he mentioned because players aren't going to tell you they were hurt through the course of the year. He mentioned he tore his labrum in week 4. Week 4, he tore his labrum against Kansas City. The guy had a Pro Bowl season. He should have made the Pro Bowl. It was a real oversight, and it was a shame that he didn't, because he was a lot better than the guys that did, a couple of them. So, but Dayon had a Pro Bowl season having torn his labrum in week 4, and said he also had an AC joint issue as well. So imagine what that's going to look like on that level, right? So now you've got 2 rookie corners, one that was playing at a pretty darn high level right away, and Tarheeb Still, who's ready to take that second-year step, I think. And then you've got the linebacking core that had essentially a rookie that was out there that had only played special team snaps his rookie season, and he's playing at a Pro Bowl level. And now you add the healthy Junior Colson there, and then you've got a secondary where you've got another season with Alohi, Elijah, and Derwin out there, even more comfortable in Jesse Minter's scheme and how important that position is to making this thing go. And I think then we're just projecting on the defensive line. Can you figure out a way to fill with numbers the production of Puna? Can Khalil Mack do it again at I think he's 32 now? 30. What is Khalil? Let me look it up here.
He's older than that. Mack's older than 32. Oh, he's Mack. You're being generous, right? What is Mackie?
Let's see. Khalil Mack is 34. So
yeah.
At 34, can he do it again? I think he can. I mean, heck, you hear Derwin. Derwin's like, I can play 10 more years, and he's been in there the entire offseason. We told you about that. Tarheeb Still saying he came in, and Khalil was like, wait, might I see you tomorrow? He's like, no, I'll see you on Monday. He's like, yeah, but tomorrow's Friday. I'll see you on Friday. So that's the kind of leader. So, I mean, that's how hard Khalil works. So I think along that defensive line, what we're projecting is a big jump for Thule, and if Thule takes that big jump, I do think that Tierra is ready to be a full-time, not a rotational defensive tackle. And that side of the ball is going to be good. I think they're going to be as good, if not better, because of younger guys and guys in the system for an extra year, just taking that step. So, I'm with you. To me, 11 wins is a lot of wins. That's a lot. That typically wins you your division, unless you got the damn Chiefs in your division. But 11 typically is going to win it for you. So Can they do more than that? If they can just mirror that, I think they're all right.
So do I, Money. I think that people get caught up in wins, 12 wins, 13 wins. Yeah, you want home field. I get it. But I still think this team is going to be better. Even if last year you get 11 or 12 wins, I don't think you need 12 wins to necessarily win the Super Bowl. I think this team, you're playing a lot. You got a tough schedule. You got a tough schedule this year. So I think you get in, you find a way. And Harbaugh's a smart coach. You know, if guys are beat up or dinged up, and he's going to take his foot off the pedal and say, look, it's about November, December. I want guys healthy. I want to be ready for the playoffs. He won't want to lose a game, but he'll sacrifice things because he knows what his team can do and where they're going to be when the dust clears. So I think it's just going to be interesting. Health is going to be everything for this team. If this team can stay healthy and they do what we think they can do, they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I think you flip it to the other side too in offense. That it's a great point. Like, how can the offense not be better? How could what is it that you would point to and say this is where they're going to take a step back? Is the running back room better? Right? Is the offensive line better? You are dropping in Mekhi Becton, at right guard, who helped the Eagles win a Super Bowl last year. Joe Alt is no longer a rookie. Now look, I'm projecting that they're going to sign Slater. They'll figure it out. There's no way they let that guy go. So okay. So we got running backs better. Quarterback is elite, top 5 in the league. At least in that conversation, I believe he is. Tight end. Tyler Conklin. We had Will Dissly at the lectern yesterday. He was talking about it was funny I'll let you tell you. Oh, yeah, that's right. Your combine stories aren't great because of what your wrestling coach did to you. He did you dirty, that wrestling coach of yours. But Dissly, you know how they line up the combine is, it's alphabetical. So Conklin, Dissly, and Will was talking about, how he and Tyler got really close at the combine and how, they've just kind of remained that way and sort of followed each other's career. And how, there's just something about having a room that's right. And hearing Will talk about that tight end room and Tucker and now Tucker back for a full season, Tucker Fisk, and adding Conklin, drafting. It's funny. He's like, drafting OG. He's like, I don't want to call him OG. He's too young. He's a rookie. He doesn't deserve that nickname.
Exactly.
Haronde Gadsden. He's like, but it's just so easy. But Will's hilarious to listen to, man. If people want to go to Chargers.com and watch his he's one of my favorite players to talk with. He's just so thoughtful and funny and self-deprecating. He's like, should I call him OG?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
He's
a rookie. So come on, man. So, but also had a chance to catch up with Greg Roman, and he was just effusive in praise with Conklin and what an important piece that was for them to get this offseason. And basically, thinks that this is a guy who's going to have a big year that some people are sleeping on. So because of the injury to Hayden Hurst last year, talking about Eric Tomlinson out there just trying to piece that thing together. Stone Smart never really got a lot of rest. So is tight end room better? Tight end room's better. No question about it. Wide receivers, you got Q playing out of position because of injuries to Simi, injuries to DJ Chark at X. Now you're 3 deep at X. You're fine. If Mike goes down, you got Trey Harris, who's a legit X. Keandre Lambert-Smith can even play a little bit of X with all that 4.2 speed that he's got. So they're better. They are way better on offense, I think. And I feel like Greg Roman's finally got the pieces that he needs to get his style of offense to work.
And that's who I'm happy for. I'm most happy for Roman. Of course, everyone's going to talk about quarterback because those are guys playing on the field. But Greg Roman, everyone talk about, oh, he's conservative. Oh, they got to do this. I think now you're going to see this guy in this offense. They're like, oh, my goodness, Greg Roman's be coach. Look what he's done with the offense. Like you said, he's got the weapons now. He's got the players to go and execute the offense that he wanted to execute. So I think kudos to him. And it's going to be interesting to watch this offense take off this year.
Yeah, I mean, look what he's done everywhere. Look what he did at Stanford with Toby Gerhart. I think we talked about this last week. I don't need to repeat myself. Toby Gerhart, Frank Gore, all those big backs, undrafted backs like Gus Edwards in Baltimore. And now he's got Najee. He's got Omarion Hampton, a first-round elite running back to work with. And we talk about tight ends. I mentioned Vernon Davis last week. I forgot about Delaney Walker. Look what they did with Delaney Walker at San Francisco. Turned him into one of the top tight ends in the league. Got that big money deal from Tennessee. And so you're talking about a guy that knows what to do with tight ends, knows what to do with running backs, And the other thing that we keep forgetting about with Greg last year, with Coach Roman last year, is Justin tore his plantar in training camp. He missed 3 weeks. 3 weeks of training camp with a new offense, with a new install, with all these new players, all these new running backs. And then he rolls his ankle in week 2 in Carolina. And it's like you never had the Justin Herbert that you thought you were going to have for the entire season. So,
right.
What's that going to do for the offense? So it all lines up. I do know they're excited about Branson Taylor as well, the tackle they took in the 6th round. They're converting to guard. Talked about him because he was injured last year. Like, if this is someone based on his tape the year prior and how good he was from year 1 to year 2, if this is someone that would have been healthy, you're talking about a guy that could have been taken on day 2. That's sort of the ability they think he has. So that's one to keep an eye on as well. Had 2 different coaches bring him up and say, hey, man, don't be sleeping on him now. This is competitors welcome. This is someone who's going to go out there and fight for snaps. So it was fun out there. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything because Ladd looks a little more muscly. Yeah. It looks like he put on some more muscle. That was a fun one. We asked him about getting down, about taking, and it was fun to. He said, "Yeah, Coach Law flipped me a tape of Julian Edelman cut-ups and Tyler Lockett cut-ups about knowing your size, knowing the physicality of the NFL, and protecting yourself, and sort of the different ways that you can do that." And he said he was starting to figure it out last year. People are like, "Oh, why is Ladd going down?" I don't know, because he's catching 100 balls.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he's 6 foot, 190 pounds, and you don't want 230-pound guys. He said guys would intentionally land on him over and over. He goes, I picked up on that about week 4 or 5. I noticed that guys were finishing tackles and extra guys were trying to get their shots in late. He's like, so if I go down, they can't bring me to the ground and the extra guy can't come in and give me that shot. It'll be a penalty. And he's like, so it's figuring out how can I maximize my yards. And he was talking about Edelman and how he used to spear for those extra 3 to 5 yards while going to the ground so guys couldn't take their shots at him. So that was a fun one.
Yeah, when you talked about a guy who throws the ball to him, Herbert, how was he? Is this a guy that's just healthy? When you're watching OTAs, he's feeling like he's running this thing. Is it just a different or? How's the big fella feeling?
Yeah, he looks like Justin Herbert. There's not a lot for him. He's just kind of, there's no pressure. That's, there's no contact. It's not like the offensive line and defensive line aren't engaging. So he's just he's picking his windows, and it's what you would expect, right? Everything's on time. Everything's between the numbers. Everything's in stride. Everything's, I don't remember who it was. It was one of the coaches that brought it up. They're like, you don't understand the benefit of having a quarterback that throws not an accurate ball, but a precise ball. Like when you have a quarterback that can deliver things precisely where it's supposed to be, it's next level sort of stuff that you can do, because it's as simple as if you're in the right place at the right time, things are going to go great. So, yeah, it's fun. And next week we'll have mandatory minicamp, so it should be even more fun, Lo.
Well, great. Well, shoot, next week I can't wait. Get out there. I know you're going to be out there watching. I might come down and surprise you, Mike.
You should. Absolutely should. I think we got a pretty good, if I remember right, I think we got a pretty good week next week. So if you do come down, maybe you're doing the pod from here, because it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is what we got. And unfortunately, I got my radio show, so it doesn't really line up very well for me. But Tuesday, we got Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, Derwin James talking. Wednesday, we got both coordinators, Greg Roman, Jesse Minner, Khalil Mack, Deion Henley. Thursday, again, Coach Harbaugh. Is what we're going to get. So it's a big week. 10th, 11th, and 12th is what they got going on out there.
Well, shoot. Thanks for keeping me informed. I'll definitely let you know if I'm coming out.
And boltsinbrazil.com, Lo.
That's right, man. That's going to be a great time. I'm telling you, money. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there. So go to boltsinbrazil.com. I mean, it's the one-stop shop. Tickets to the game, an unbelievable tailgate, 5 hours of just great fun. JG for Kansas City is going to be there. Derek Johnson, leading tackle for Kansas City back in the day, had a lot of great battles against him. He's going to be representing the Chiefs. So we're just going to have a great time. Go to Bolts in Brazil. They'll take care of your tickets, your air travel, your hotel. So it'll make it simple for you. Just go to boltsinbrazil.com.
Love it. Love it. We'll be out there. Well, we'll be out there. Obviously, I'm going with the team, but we'll be out there tomorrow, next week for the veteran minicamp, mandatory minicamp. Looking forward to that. Hopefully, we got you a bunch of information. Haven't been out there breaking it all down here. We appreciate you all. Oh, last thing. There were like a lot of YouTube comments about my hair. I do not highlight my hair. All right, I would never. I barely cut my hair. I think it's longer right now than it normally is. I've just been lazy to get my hair cut. And in the summer, the water warms up and the sun is out. And when you combine the salt water with the sun, it tends to give it a little bit of color. So I think the difference between it being longer and lighter, I'm not putting sun in my hair. I'm not squeezing lemons into my hair.
You're over there bleaching those streaks. You're looking
sweet. I'm not freaking going to get it colored with the tinfoil on my head and they're freaking giving me the instinct Lance Bass highlights. No, that's not happening. It's just a natural look. And I sit down right here because I squeeze out every last second I can in the water when we do the pod. So I come straight from the water, which is why it looks so ridiculous. But you know what? Whatever. That's the beautiful thing about being married. Is there something you're like, I don't care. She got a divorce because my hair looks ridiculous? No. So I can have hair that looks ridiculous. It's kind of nice.
You look great. I love it.
No, I don't, but I appreciate that.
No, the hair looks good. I wish I could grow some. I wish I could grow it back. Man.
Well, you've got a beautiful head. You don't need any hair. I've got a ridiculous looking head. I need hair to cover it up. I mean, look at that, Josh. It's terrible. All right, everybody. Keep leaving those comments. We love it. We love to check them out on the YouTube. And we'll be back next week. Appreciate it. Thanks to Lindsay for hooking it up. And again, check out Preston. She's the one that's going to play us out here. This has been Bleav in Chargers. Bolt up.
Bolt up.